Welcome to Integrity and Joy. I'm Steve Walker. This is episode 17 of Integrity and Joy, my conversation with Jillian Hervey of Lion Babe. Welcome to Integrity and Joy. I am Steve Walker, former U.S. diplomat, activist, educator, and now life coach, meditation teacher, and podcaster. Welcome. Really excited about this episode today, and it's been a great week. This was sort of the highlight of what was a really great week for me. I had a couple of great coaching sessions with clients. Really, one of them was just amazing. A real great kind of breakthrough. Picked up a couple of new clients, which is always exciting, and then on the personal side, had friends visiting in the area, got to have dinner with them, visited a former student of mine, had breakfast with another former student of mine. Really just, it was joyful, it was meaningful. But the highlight was this conversation that I had with Jill Hervey that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Jill is one half of the electronic soul duo Lion Babe, who you've probably heard of. And they've, if you haven't heard of them, they've been around for about 13 years, I think, making music, performing at major festivals, including Coachella. They've collaborated with Pharrell, Mark Ronson, Childish Gambino. I mean, real legends in the music industry. So they've had a tremendous amount of success. And, Jill and I go back almost 20 years to when I joined the Life School, this amazing high school program, almost like a small school within a bigger school that I've talked about before, that was all project-based learning and a lot of work on social and emotional intelligence. Very collaborative, strong sense of community, really a beautiful, life-changing program. And so Jill and I, worked together in that when she was a senior in high school and I was a teacher. And she's just, you'll see, she's just a fantastic human being, in addition to being incredibly talented. She's very down to earth, very self-reflective. Then she talks about, what it was like growing up in Chappaqua, what it was like being the daughter of Vanessa Williams. And, her dad also was very successful in the music industry. And then the whole story of how Lion Babe comes to be. And again, I think you'll really enjoy it. I hope you're following the podcast wherever you're listening, and that you leave a 5-star rating and review, because we would love to get this in front of more people, and the 5-star rating will help us do that, because I think there are a lot of people out there who'd enjoy listening and would benefit from listening. Please follow on social media at Integrity and Joy on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and Threads and Blue Sky. And also, if you're interested in how life coaching or integrity circles could transform your life, go to integrityandjoy.com and sign up for a free consultation. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Jill Hervey. All right, so Jillian Hervey, welcome to Integrity and Joy. This is so unbelievably exciting for me. I don't know how long it's been since we last saw each other, but it's been a minute. We first, for the audience, we first met 19 years ago when you were a junior in high school, and I guess you were a senior at that point. You were a senior in high school, 2006, right, to 2007.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And I just joined the Life School staff, and we were together like almost all afternoon every day, because you were in economics and U.S. foreign policy with me, and we had like a little family.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it was really beautiful. When you think back, what was your childhood like?
When I look back now, I especially now living in New York City, I really appreciate the nature that I was around and just that classic, you know, freedom that every child wants to be able to just get your feet wet and run around and play in the trees and just the safety of just doing whatever you want basically every day, having a great education, having a great group of friends, a family that was very present, very dear friends that were funny and silly and loud. And, I really have a lot of gratitude about that experience. Obviously, even when I was in high school, I was already dealing with like knowing that I was not like everyone else, being in a predominantly white neighborhood,
Yeah.
which was something that I still, I think, come to terms with or realize, or it's definitely played a part in my journey, in my career, what I write about, how I make art, all of this. But I still think that even knowing that, the space and the people that were around me did give me agency to be myself and feel comfortable in my skin to the amount that I could at that time. So I think I had a very positive childhood, and now being a mom, I'm trying to create those same experiences for my son too. And yeah, it's just gratitude, and I still am like, how do my parents do that? It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting. So
Four of
you're,
us.
for anybody who has been living under a rock and doesn't know, you're Vanessa Williams' daughter,
Yeah.
and or she's your mom at this point. I think is more. But uh, and and she grew up in Chappaqua, right? Went
Yes.
to the same high school. What like have you guys talked about like why she chose to raise you all in the same town? And because she dealt with, and she's been public about it, that she's dealt with a lot of racism when she
Yeah.
was living there. Why did she go back there to raise her kids? And what was it like? Before we get into like what was it like having Vanessa Williams as your mom, but what was it like with your mom having grown up in the same town, right? Because there's like a lens that they can kind of put on you, right? Or you see things through.
Of course. I mean, we actually recently talked about it because um, you know, I was born in LA, and I had just recently finally got to take my son out there. I've been trying forever. And this was around the fires were just happening. We were just talking about life. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was hoping that I could bring Sonny out there and spend a lot of time. But now I get worried. He has asthma. Like, I don't want him to be in that air and all this stuff.
Mm.
And she's like, well, um, not for the fires, but the LA riots were really the catalyst that got my mom to bring us home.
Wow.
My dad and her obviously were working out there, and the industry's out there. So, and I have tons of family there still. But basically, she said that was the trigger moment. She just felt unsafe. She was like, LA was on fire. People were attacking each other, and I knew that if I went home to where my parents were teaching school at Elmsford and in Millwood, if you were over there, you would be safe. And for her as well, she kind of had a little bit of a different experience because when she was at Greeley, there were about 4 or 5 Black families that also had a good amount of siblings within each family. So that alone gave her much more of a diverse surrounding for her. So her best friend was Black. She had Black friends, and so I think she had this experience like, oh, it is all combined. Everyone's together. You'll love it.
Her
And
little bubble, right?
yeah, yeah. So she was in the 70s, so I'm sure it was like a whole other thing. And she loved the music department. And so she just had the faculty and her friends for her gave her this like really positive experience.
Right.
And then, for me, I had great faculty, I had great friends as well, but it was just very different in that aspect. So but yeah, that was really the catalyst. The LA riots, she said that's why we came back to New York. And then once we were here, we just never left. So
Wow, that's fascinating. And both of your parents were in the music industry, right? I mean, your mom obviously a recording star, and your dad a producer, right? And
he was a PR and
yeah,
actually
okay.
manager. Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like? Like both of them very successful, obviously, and in that industry. How did that play a role in your childhood? Like, were you surrounded by that kind of like energy? And you've got two like I mean, both of your parents are just so darn impressive. Like not just in terms of their resume, but like personally, like they were great parents to deal with from a teacher perspective, like so involved and supportive and loving and all that. What was that like having them as parents? And of course they split at some point. How old were you when they split? And what was it like having them as parents?
I was in second grade, and again, I agree with you. They are great parents and just great humans overall. And even within their divorce, I know that I am a special case that I've seen them work through their relationship after all these years in such a loving way. Like they're still partners in their own right, and I think they knew at that moment in time, the best thing for both of them, for all of us, was for everyone to live and lead the lives that they needed to live, basically, and
Right.
allowing that. And but then also knowing that they were creating times for us to be together, making sure we're always together for holidays, for dinners, and all this stuff, and never feel like, it was weird to have everyone in the same room, which I know a lot of people deal with. So just having that emotional maturity from them early on, I feel like helps me navigate a lot of relationships moving forward. And yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of everything. I had a very normal childhood, being in Chappaqua and doing everything, like running around town and whatever I don't know what we were doing, but we were just doing things. But then there would be a day, we're whisked off and we're in the studio, and my dad's like, "Hey, I want you guys to meet Aretha Franklin. Here she is." And I'm looking at her invisible bag with all her makeup in there, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And then my mom's on set for something, and we'd go off and be there and just hanging out in the trailer or going to see things or see her backstage on Broadway. So I was always around that my whole life, especially even when we were really little. That's when they were taking us everywhere. So I never really knew anything other than that. And I always appreciate now, and I can't even wrap my head around it, because for me, I like when I work, I need to like work, and like if I had Sunny there, I don't even know if I would be able to focus. So for my mom's ability to do all the stuff she was doing and then still have us jump on her lap and, run off or give us a snack or make sure we have water or all this, is pretty impressive. But they always wanted us to be involved and see what they did, how they worked. And I learned so much just from like the intake of just being in the space. Like now I'm in a moment and I'm like, oh my God, I've been here before. Like I didn't even realize I've been here before. I know you, like, so um it's crazy how, I mean, I truly believe you do pick your parents, because now my life, I couldn't have had a better team to help advise me as I navigate this.
Yeah, it's really great. Wow. And so, at what point did you start to realize that you were drawn to the arts, music, dance, and what did that mean to you at that age? Like, what was it like from the beginning? Were you just drawn to it? It's like, oh, I love doing this, or was it like, oh, this is what I want to do the rest of my life?
I was always drawn to dance. So dance was like the first one. And my mom, we were like in our first little ballet class or whatever at like 2 years old. So I know that was, and we had the My Gym in LA, like running around and dancing. And she just knew I loved music. And she just always, if wherever we had like a passion, she's like, oh, let's make sure they're doing it. So dance was always a thing, because I think I just loved being in a huge space and being able to run around. I had a lot of energy. I still have a lot of energy. So that was the thing. And then all the other stuff, the singing, the acting, there was this big looming cloud of pressure for me, because my mom was my mom and she was such a uh, excellent person, just overall, like, you know, uh, just all these accolades, and also the way she approaches roles and things. She's a musical theater like nut, like that's what she
Right.
loves. She's all about reading the music and knowing the script and knowing the history and really researching things, and very brainy. And I was always a little bit intimidated by that. I was like, okay, well, I feel like if I have to do that, I have to do that her way. Or I didn't know how to do it. I
Yeah.
didn't have another example of, well, that seems like the only way, and that's really hard. And I don't know if I have the chops.
Right.
So I think dance always was the conduit into everything else. It gave me my confidence. And then as I started to grow up, and my dad was obviously like fine with it, and he knew we were athletic. He always said we could do whatever we wanted. We just have to work hard and practice. And so then when I started to get into other sports, and the scheduling just became crazy. It's like, are you going to do basketball, softball, or dance? And how are you going to fit all this stuff in? And I just thought, I was like, you know what? I love softball, but I really want to be dancing. Like I would be more upset if I wasn't playing, if I
Mm.
wasn't dancing. So that's kind of how I made the decision with my schedule. And from there, I was like, okay, this can be something. I still really didn't think about acting or singing until I got to college, really. Like I was thinking about it, but I don't think I openly like would say it because I was nervous. I mean, I was in an a cappella group, but that was probably the extent of my singing in
Right.
at that time. So yeah, I think it's just when you find something that you love and just gives you this type of freedom, you never know where that is going to take you. Like I couldn't have told you that I was going to be in a band, and that all this dance training and practice and performance practice would be so relevant to what I ended up doing. So
Right, right, yeah. Amazing, right? When you think about it, and there's so much pressure put on kids to figure it out, right? When you're a teenager, everybody's asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up, right?
exactly. And
I'm
sometimes
supposed
you
to
just
know.
need to live and travel and experience things too.
Right, right. So when it came time to choose a college to go to, you ended up at the new school. What was that about? Like, how'd you choose that and why? And
The new school, I think really did riff off of life school. Their kind of practice is very similar, community based, intimate settings, just a lot of, again, I think I always felt I never really liked to be graded. I wanted the freedom to learn about something without the pressure of like having to hit a certain mark, because I think sometimes when you give yourself that, you actually hinder the whole thing. But if you have this like freedom of just exploring whatever you're learning, or you actually excel, you go past it because you're not thinking about that stuff. You're actually thinking about the work you're doing. So and I loved that about life school. I just loved the conversations we had and kind of the safety and space to like critically think about things and talk about them, and maybe not come up with a final answer, but just know that that was part of the work. The progress was really part of, and the process was really part of like the journey. So the
mm,
new school really emulated that as well. Even with dance, I mean, I at first was like, oh, I need to go to a conservatory, but again, I was like, I don't necessarily know what kind of dance I want to do, and I see myself making work. I see myself doing other things. So they just had great facilities and teachers that were like immersed in the dance scene in New York, and I think that was the thing. It's like you hear when people go to college, they go and then they spend 4 years building up this whole thing, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and then they go to start their career and they don't know anyone, they have no connections
right.
whatsoever.
Mm.
So yeah, so that really like ended up being those both things. Like, okay, if you want to be an artist, you got to be in the scene, and New York is the scene. And again, I mean, I don't really talk about this because it was so short, but I ended up going to Syracuse that first semester. I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so that was
Right.
my mother's alma mater, and I went for musical theater. So all of that, my gut the entire time was like, this is not your path. This is not your path. This is not your path. And I think I've always been a people pleaser. And at that moment, I gave into it, and I was like, okay, like maybe let's do it. Maybe this is for me. And as soon as I got there, I knew that, my friend Julian, remember Julian, he's like, when are you coming to New York? Like every time we would talk, he's like, I'll see you soon, right? And I'm like, I guess I'll be there soon. And he was right. So sometimes you have to take the biggest wrong step to know that like, no, the thing you were thinking about is where you're supposed to be.
Right. How did your mom deal with that? How was that conversation?
Um, I really don't know. I think I always put pressure on myself that I thought she was doing, and
Right.
it was actually me. Like when push came to shove, she's like, "Oh, that's fine." I'm like, "What?" I can go. I don't have to stay here. She's like, no, I just I had a great experience there. You're super talented. You could do all this stuff. If you want to do Broadway, I can see you on it. So I think she was always just like giving me invitations to be like, there's so many lanes for you.
Right.
Try this. I'm notoriously indecisive. So at that time I was like, I do need that. I want my mom to tell me what to do. And then I realized I'm like, no, I don't, so that was good. And she really like just was I think she was just happy that I was taking control and
Yeah.
making making the choice. So
Isn't that amazing if you think about it, right? That like, I do think for a lot of us, there are things in our childhood that can turn us into people pleasers,
oh,
right? And then you've got this mom who's, like the sun in a way, right? And just gravitational force and she brings you to Chappaqua where she grew up, and that, even though there were problems, that worked out, right? That ended up being pretty good for you. And so you can understand why you'd create this like narrative in your head that would be like, well, I guess I have to follow in her footsteps to the next level, right? But to have that awareness and the courage to go, oh no, this is the moment where I need to actually create my own path forward. That's beautiful, right? And I can imagine for her it was probably a moment of great pride because she's such a powerful person. Like she's such a strong person. Like to see her daughter asserting that strength and that agency must have been a really wonderful moment in a way, you know?
yeah, and then when I get to school at new school, I was preparing for a piece, and we were using the Alvin Ailey space, and I remember
Mm.
seeing her for a drink, and I was like, oh, I'm off to go to rehearsal, and she was like, you're living my dream. I'm like, what? She closed the cab door and pulled off saying that, and I was like, what? And I'm like, what does that mean? But for her, her dream post Syracuse was to go into the city, be on Broadway, start from the bottom like everyone else and live this life in the city and go to dance class and all that stuff. So I was doing all that, and she didn't get to do that because she became Miss America. And so that was really weird. That was another shift for me when I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that anything that I'm doing, she's like she feels like she didn't do, like that's
Yeah,
so it's constantly like that as our relationship grows. It's really cool how we kind of fill each other's spots in certain ways.
that's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're at the new school. What was that experience like? And did you get clarity quickly about what kind of dance you were drawn to and why, and who was influencing you at that time?
I really loved the new school. I was living in the West Village. I was, out with all my friends. I met a lot of like my dance friends were really great and talented. We kind of had a big mix of people. So some people were like studying dance, but they were also doing other stuff. And then there were people that were super classically trained, and then there was people that were more choreographic and they wanted to make soundscapes and all this stuff. So it was
Hmm.
like a very different
Wow.
energy than any kind of dance space I'd ever been into. I was coming from competition dance too, so
Right, right.
and kind of the bunhead world of all that stuff. So this was just another way of freedom. Like I could wear my hair down to class, I could wear socks instead of ballet shoes. So all this kind of like understanding my body in different ways, and also just being able to create whatever my practice looks like. It was so freeing. And we did a lot of like improvisation, which was huge and has been by far the most informative, important thing that I studied at school was improv, because again, that gave me this confidence to always have a way. Like it was a matchmaker, and I know every time I'm given an opportunity to do something, and oh, we don't have the stage specs, or there is no stage, or whatever. Can you make it work? And I'm like, I can make it work. You know what I mean? So I had, and we were doing our pieces in the hallways and all the stuff, because New York is a small space. We didn't have all the facilities like NYU, but we had the right minds. I think that
Right.
just gave me a whole freedom. And yeah, to this day, my very close friends are from that school. And I'm actually next week, I'm going in to talk to students that I do every year. There's a course called The Practical Side of Performance. And they come in, and I remember that was super informative for me to get people from all different walks of the industry coming in and telling them little antidotes, and just similar to this, like pre-podcast world, you were just having these
Right.
conversations with real makers, and it was super inspiring. So I like to give back and make sure that I connect with the students, and also I learned so much from them now. Like
Yeah.
they're like so it just to see their passion and excitement about the world, and their anger and everything. It's really cool. So it's nice to like kind of remind myself of that person that I was, and always try to hold on to her, as I move through.
Yeah. Did you take to the improv easily, or was that an adjustment? Because you grow up again in that competition world and everything's so precisely choreographed and
I mean, I think it actually was extremely freeing for me, because
mm,
um at first it's a little like nerve-wracking, because you're like, oh my, and you want to be like good, like what is good, but you want to be this thing, and then I'm like, okay, I can come out here and do like a bunch of turns, but like what is that really? So I think it really developed my language of like, how do I speak with my body, and you know
mm,
that, and then that along with kind of studying other works, like we were watching dance film and we were learning about all these different styles of dance, so it wasn't just about like Balanchine, or Martha Graham, like those are all amazing things, but those were just like the things that everyone knew about already. We were like, let's go deeper and let's find
right.
out this, like, then later you see Beyonce do this, her countdown video, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's Rosa Stance Rosa. It's like this whole choreographer. I'm like, she took the whole thing, So it's like learning about that stuff is crazy, because it informs so many things that have nothing to do with it. And again, that's always still now when I'm looking for inspiration, like I am not looking anywhere online or anything. I'm looking like to the weirdest places, because I'm like, I don't want anyone to find this or know about this, because nowadays, like, oh, people take everything.
Right? Yeah, everything feels a lot very derivative, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So it sounds like New School ends up being this fantastic place. Were you, what was it different in terms of, or how was it different, I guess, in terms of being in New York City? So now you're not in, predominantly white Chappaqua anymore. What's happening in terms of your sort of identity, your sense of self, your ability to feel even more comfortable in your own skin? Like, what was that like?
It was honestly just flourishing. Everything was
Mm,
bubbling up, just because I think, again, having references of people that look like me every single day. Like when I walk down the street, it was just
uh,
like a colorful mosaic of feelings, expressions, and all of that was just affirming. And then I was like, oh, I'm cute. Like people are hollering at me. Like, I'm not saying that I wasn't at Greeley or anything like that. I had my boyfriend, I had my life and whatever, and I know people thought it was beautiful, but I couldn't hear that at the time, because I think I just like had this certain idea of what beauty was, the long hair and the straight hair and, all this stuff. So I was like, okay, when I got into the city and kind of just looked around and saw people looking at me, and I'm like, oh, I take up space, like, and getting comfortable with that. And like, that was all happening simultaneously, but I loved it. I mean, I was like, at my Italian restaurant all the time, meeting these Italian waiters, and they were teaching. I was like, "Can I learn Italian for you?" Sure, like whatever. So I was just like bubbling around, going vintage shopping, and like I loved it. It was like it was just like my little Renaissance moment. And then of course, again, like they've always been, but the queer community, like Oh my God. We just were like that was just meant to be. Like when I was in Syracuse and I went to new school, first person I met, always a gay guy. The next thing you know, best friends, inseparable, and just these heart talks and just being around someone that was like so also unapologetically themselves, like just again gave me permission to do that for me. So that was a huge factor also into like kind of finding my voice and being able to like just go for it.
To live authentically, right? To be your authentic self rather than trying to conform to whatever you think, especially as a people pleaser, right? If I think these are the norms and the standards, then I have to, contort myself as much as possible to fit those, right?
Yeah, it just blasted it all open, to be honest.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. It's interesting. Lauren Brown, another life school grad, has had a podcast and has done a lot of work and now at Columbia around the different like ideas of beauty and standards of beauty, and particularly around hair. And, she speaks very powerfully about, what you were saying that, growing up in Chappaqua, it's like whoever had like straight blonde hair, that was good. And
Right.
having curly, brown or black hair, not so much. And you, like now, your persona is so built around your gorgeous hair, right? And I mean, when did that start to shift? When did you feel and why that you were able to start to embrace your hair and a broader palette of what beautiful is?
So that took time for sure. Because even when I was starting to get to know my body, um, when I was at new school, I was still, doing extensions, keeping it like long and sleek, and I kind of, and then I would be dancing all day and sweat it out. I'm like, oh, sometimes I just wish I could just wear it curly. And then I'm around all these people, and they're like, oh, I would love to see your hair curly. It's just like kind of, why don't you do it? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And so finally, it was senior year. And I was like, okay, I have this is the time. Like it's like the end of this chapter. I gotta say hello to a new person. So I literally like took out all my extensions and I dyed my hair blonde. And I'd never dyed my hair. My mom was like, you're not allowed to dye your hair when we're growing up. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I always imagined a golden thing. I don't know why. Always like I had gold in my head, like gold bang thing forever. And so I went to my mom's salon and I was like, I don't know. I need to lighten it up. And she had this non-invasive treatment whenever she was so excited. Carol, who I still go see to this day. And she made me blonde and I was like super short hair and blonde. And I just like, I don't know, it was the most freeing thing ever. I just was like, oh, like I could do this. This is me. And from then, once I had the color, I was like, I don't need to straighten this. I don't need like this is it, And
Wow.
that's kind of how I started to just work. Oh, it's curly and blonde. It's just free. And then it just kept, and I was like, well, it can just go bigger and crazier. And, let's just run with this. And then I started feeling like the kind of incorporating these wigs and pieces that I think was so like ashamed of before, um, became like a weapon for me to be like, okay, I'm going to build this larger than life character of myself and use that. Like even in my senior thesis, I'm like crawling at the end of it. I'm like crawling towards a TV that's actually repeating like these little splices of Beyonce videos. Cause like I felt like I was sometimes getting brainwashed of like, this is how you have to look. This is how you have to look. And I'm in my mom's old gown and I'm crawling towards the stage with this long ponytail and there's a bunch of hair all over the place. And that for me, that was like representing like, okay, this is a new birth. I'm leaving this path of trying to be this person and I'm going to do something else. And even by the end of it, my hair is just messy. Like it's just crazy. I don't even know what it is. And I'm just in a leaf guard, and so that was all, it all became part of like how I performed and how I communicated, and it was really freeing. And then of course it became also a little bit of a trap once the success came, because I had no idea how much that was like a thing. I didn't know until, I
Yeah.
mean, flash forward, I'm at Universal, signed to a major label. We're going to do radio interviews all day where I'm not even on camera, and I want to just wear a baseball hat and a bun, and they're like, "Oh, I think we need you to put your hair on." I'm like, "Speaking." And so that was like a whole other thing. I'm like, well, do you guys even want to work with me if I didn't have my hair looking like this? So it's
Yeah.
it's an ongoing journey.
Wow.
It's an ongoing journey.
Isn't that fascinating? Wow, it becomes such a core part of your identity. You can't escape it, right?
Can't escape. I mean, to this day, I cannot
Yeah.
escape it.
Well, it shows how successful the branding of Lion Babe has been, right? I mean,
No,
well done.
I got a major hair contract, which was really cool for Pantene.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was they're like, we got to see your hair, all of your hair, and you have to use all your hair. I was like, let's do it. This is amazing. It's a full circle moment. So
Well, and that was an amazing. I mean, I want to come back, in time again. But before we do, like that Pantene campaign, if I remember correctly, like that was a big darn deal. Like that was like that there was an ad campaign that was, because there were a couple of you, weren't there, that was like really celebrating black hair and showing people that like beautiful hair could look a lot of different ways. That was groundbreaking at the time, wasn't it?
it was a big deal. It really, and it was also like right before kind of this new emergence of kind of talking about these corporate companies and
Right,
the misconduct going on, and
right.
this. So it was like, again, that was a big moment for me to, I loved to be that person and to be the voice of that. But there were even problems within that, the Strong is Beautiful campaign. They wanted to write a poem about it they're talking about all the textures and everything during the commercial, and they wanted me to read it. I'm like, amazing. Then I read the poem. I'm like, there's no way this was written by a black person. There's no way. Like,
Oh my gosh.
and they were like, oh yeah, it's written by our, head, this guy, old white guy. And I was like, okay, that's not gonna work. Like I just, why would we do that? That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So I'm like, if you're doing all of this work to create this voice and have this moment, the voice has to be that. So
Right.
that was a moment for me again, like, I could have said nothing, and who knows, maybe I would have been an ambassador for longer,
Yeah.
but I knew that I could not sit with it being like, I'm super happy to promote this and be part and be the face, but I need you guys to also take the steps to make me feel like this is what we're doing, because
Yeah.
you can't sell me on this and then we're not doing that. You know what I mean? So, and then at the end, I was in the commercial and they went with that poem, and I didn't say it and I didn't speak it. And I was like, so that's what it is. So,
Oh.
it was, it's just, everything always has both ends.
Interesting, right? I mean, it's like here they are doing this thing that's groundbreaking, but at the same time doing it in a way that kind of undermines the exact message they're trying to make, right?
Exactly. But I think at the end of the day, I do feel the impact of, like, yes, being seen, just representing my hair and my curls. And that was right after we left our label. So it was, it was a new offer that came in, and we were
Right.
super just happy to have kind of that big opportunity and be like, hey, look, we're still doing this, guys. And then for them to come to us wanting my actual hair and my size and texture and stuff also made me feel like, you know what, I was right about this, like, and people can see, and they want the genuine love that I have for myself and my hair. That's not the
Right.
hair.
Right.
That's what they want. So again, that was, I think in hindsight, it was at the time super stressful and hard to, like,
Yeah.
feel what choice was I making? Was it the right one or wrong? But I don't have any regrets about it, and I'm it was an amazing experience. So I
Great act of integrity. I mean, it's that you do have these character defining moments when you face these moral and ethical dilemmas, right? And knowing that you can rely on good values, and clearly you had the strength of conviction in your values and what mattered. And that takes courage, but it's, that's the whole point of naming this podcast Integrity and Joy, right? Is that integrity is the path to having a good life, right? You have to live authentically
It's
and true to
true.
yourself.
Yeah, and even I think again having my parents as examples and to lean on in that for advice, knowing my dad who's worked from anyone from Muhammad Ali to like Babyface, like all these people, and there was
Right.
all moments in life for them that they had to make difficult choices as well, and some flopped, some didn't, you know. So I think having references as well as like no, you got to stand on your own because at the end of the day, everything is fleeting. Even if you didn't say anything and you got all that stuff, like it can all fall apart, you know. And for my mom, I think she always looked at my career as she was like, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but you didn't have to go in trying to prove yourself again. You know, I entered this and the entire world was against me, basically. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So understand that and that you have the luxury of you're just people just love you. They just want you to be yourself and be happy and stuff. So there's always challenges, but know that like, you know, I mean, she's basically like, you have it easy. You know, so I was really I didn't think about that until she mentioned that. And then I was like, oh my God, yeah, I already have to deal with all the no's and all these people. But then imagine they're saying no because they're like, well, you know, you know, just like you have to create this whole new legacy for yourself, you know, and she still has to do that to this day, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I think having them help guide me was really great as well.
No, that's awesome. Now back at the new school, that well, first of all, I read someplace that you turned down a role in Gossip Girl when you were in school. Is that true?
I yes, I was in senior, it was either senior or junior or whatever. I was becoming more confident and I was like, okay, I do want to act. Like I think I'm ready. And so I went to an agency and my mom's friend who was a great agent, she's still a great agent, and we just sat down and talked and she was just like, okay, let me see what I have, you know, around here and whatever. And that was like the first thing that came in. And then I was like, no. Just because for me, then again, that's what kind of like made me think, okay, maybe I'm not ready for acting because acting is a lot of judgment. Acting, you have no control of the narrative of what you're doing. It's a lot about proving yourself and all this stuff that I had just dealt with to get out of that, to become the
Right.
performer I was. And I just felt like I wasn't prepared for it. And, you know, yeah, in hindsight, I wish I just like went for all of the things there's been many opportunities that I think I am like either I don't have the time to prepare for it or oh the role's maybe not right for me. But I'm like I'm playing a role. It's not me. You know what I mean? But I don't think I've had the time and um yeah, I just chickened out basically. If I really think about it, that's what happened. I was like, I don't know. I just it's too much judgment and I don't want to be judged right now. I
Right.
wasn't
Right.
ready.
Well, think about it. I mean, at that age, you were really in the midst of this incredible self-exploration and growth, right? Figuring out who you are as a dancer, performer, as a person, right? But your identity, like coming to terms with all that. That's a lot. And that's a moment of incredible vulnerability. To then say, in this moment where I feel so vulnerable, gonna put myself in front of the whole world. That's a lot to ask of anybody, isn't it?
See, exactly. See, I knew I made the right choice.
A little bit of grace and compassion for your younger self, right?
Yes, exactly. I have to have it. I have to have some. So
Yeah,
yeah, it worked out. It worked
yeah.
out.
And you know, our regrets are always, almost always, going to be about the things we didn't do rather than the things we did do. So that's going to be part of life too, right?
True. It's true.
Yeah. Now, you and Lucas, your partner, met at the new school, right?
So he went to Northeastern in Boston, but I was doing like I got selected to do one of my pieces at in Boston,
Oh, okay.
representing the new school. They were
Okay.
doing a dance conference.
Right.
So I went there and my mom's best friend, who also was a longtime stylist and costume designer for her son was at Northeastern. And so the crazy thing was, even before, when I was senior year looking at prospective schools to go to, I went to Northeastern to just look at it for a weekend. And I was stayed with my friend, Zach, who's like a brother to me, who's now like a brother to Lucas. And they were friends. So my first college party, I'm like, I'm coming from Chappaqua, so I'm like, I guess I'll wear a dress and like curl my hair and whatever. I get there and like all the guys, there's a bunch of dudes and they're all playing beer pong, sitting on the couch, and basically like, who's that girl in the corner? Like, and I was so like, I don't know what to do, who to talk to, so I just started listening to the music, and it was like this lo-fi, like kind of fun beat, and I was like, I've never heard. What is this song? I don't know the song. So I asked my friend Zach. I was like, "What's this music?" And he's like, "Oh, it's that dude on the couch. Like he makes music." And I was like, "Oh." And so I literally walked over to him. I was like, "Hi, I'm Jill. I like your music." That was it. That was like the first thing I said to him.
Wow. Wow. And you still do like his music. Go figure.
Still do like his music. So that was our initial meeting, and then when I went back for college, I hung out with my friend Zach again, and Lucas was there. And I definitely thought he was cute and all of this, but he had a girlfriend, and we kind of just like said hi and followed each other on Facebook, and then that was really it until I got to school, and he was coming back. I guess and Northeastern does like a co-op thing, so
Mhm.
they have that extra year, and so he was doing it in New York because he grew up downtown and he just wanted to be home. And then so we started seeing like just hanging out and through the same friends, same group of friends. And he was like making beats for his friends. Like some of them were rappers, and I knew he played guitar and all this stuff. So it was a very like casual meeting, and we kind of just were just talking and hanging out. And then I felt like I just like I feel like if I told him I was thinking about singing, he would be like you would be into it, I think, because he's just making these beats like these. So I mentioned, I was like, yeah, I can sing. I just like, I don't know where to begin. Like, and then he was working at a label called Truth and Soul Records in Brooklyn. And they were all like great vinyl press, like lots of instruments and all the old soul. And we would talk about music and all this stuff. So music definitely was like a through line. And then he brought home his boss or whatever gave him a bunch of records and was like, "Oh, take these home and do whatever you want with them." And so one record was like this obscure record, Eunice Collins at the hotel, and he made this beat, and it ended up being our first song, "Treat Me Like Fire."
Wow.
And it was like he made a little hook, and I was so nervous to sing in front of him. I remember he gave me the song on my computer. I took it into my room. I closed the door, got my garage band set up, and I sang a little demo over it
Oh.
quietly. And then he heard it and he was like, "This is cool. Like, this is good. Let's make it into something." And then kind of the rest was history. We just started building from there. So yeah, it was wild.
Did you know, like, at what point did you know, like, oh, this is going to be a thing professionally? Like,
Um,
remember when you were like, let's form a band, or was it just kind of like you woke up one day and realized, oh, we've been making music together and this is kind of a thing?
well, we kind of, as we were making the music, we're like, well, what do you do with this anyway once it's done?
Mm.
And at that time, it really was like, well, how does a band exist anyway? Like, well, we have to have some type of online presence, like, so we should probably make a website or like make sure the song's on SoundCloud and we're like, well, if we want to book shows in New York, like we got to have somewhere for them to listen to it. So it was very like just the most simple way of approaching what this is.
Wow.
And like, we need a band name just because we always thought it was going to be like something like a Blondie, like I could be the front woman and then we have all these other people. And then it just became the two of us. So even within the name, that was like a choice to do something that was kind of like, it's not me, it's me and whoever.
Yeah.
and that obviously changed a little bit. But yeah, we really just wanted to create a name and like a website and somewhere to listen. And for me, it was a visual. I was like, I'm extremely visual. I'm coming from dance. I was already trying to do some type of dance film. I had some friends that were in film at school, and we were going to make something anyway. And then I had the song, and I was like, oh, can we do a video? And so we ended up basically writing that treatment together with the friend, another Lucas, weird, a lot of Lucases. and and then, so we filmed that and made the video and had it. I was like on Vimeo. That's where all the videos were being.
Right, right.
And I had my dance friends come in. And we went upstate and like I put them in animal masks and we danced around a fire. And then I got my clothes from like my favorite place downtown and everything. Which I did my own makeup. But the hair was like, okay, I want this larger than life hair. Who can I call? And my mom's longtime hairstylist, who is like an uncle to me, who's phenomenal, was so excited. He's like, oh yeah, I'll find something you don't worry. And so he like came over and taught me how to put on my big hair and yeah, and then I went out upstate and shot it, and it was such a fun process. Like I think we were just having so much fun that it just became like, let's just try it, and then it just we literally put it up, and like next thing we know, we're getting all these emails from labels and
Wow.
what was that? I can't even remember right now. There was something like we had what is it? A World Star Hip Hop, which is funny because like little Jillian always wanted to be like accepted by Black people in general. So it was really like a full circle moment to be like on World Star. I was like,
Wow.
what? And it was my leg. I was doing a big bot ma, kicking my face, and it was just repeating over and over again. And at that time, there wasn't really gifts. So it really stood out. So I think everyone just clicked on it.
Wow.
They're like, who is this person? Who is she? And, next thing you know, we're like, okay, now well, the door's open. So do we want to like sign a record deal, off of one song? Like, see, crazy idea. But we did. So
Wow.
yeah.
And 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 so, well, first of all, like, where did Lion Babe come from? Where did that name come from?
So I don't know if you remember, but I went on safari with my
Yeah, yeah.
mom.
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah.
That trip was transformative for me. I don't know everything about it. Like, I don't know. It felt like this big return home. And that was kind of like the first whispers of like this woman I was going to become. Also,
Um,
I think I had a lot of time to just think about my life and see all these animals. And especially when I saw the lions and the lionesses, they were just like the most powerful things, but so rested. Like we didn't see them hunting or anything. We just saw them lounging in the middle of the day, soaking in the sun or hiding under a tree. And I just like never forgot that feeling of looking at one and looking, it just felt this like exchange. And then I
um,
love lions. After that, and then Lucas is a Leo. I'm a
uh,
Gemini. I've always been into astrology because my mom's into astrology. And so that duality of the lion and the babe and
oh yeah.
kind of strength and vulnerability, like those were the two terms of like what we
Wow.
wanted to be. And that's what a lion and a babe represented. And also we liked the ambiguity of the name again, and kind of like you don't know if it's a person or if it's a thing. And then yeah, and then we literally tried to think of other stuff, but nothing. I was like, that's lion babe. That's
Meant
what
to
it's
be. Yeah.
to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Now I remember early on, you came by the life school and we sat outside, and you were like, "Yeah, we're going to make a go of this career, but we're going to go to London right now because we think it's going to be easier to kind of grow initially and figure this first stage out and then come back." Tell me a little bit more about that. Like what was behind that decision and what was the timing of it? Was it like you signed with the label and then you went to London, or was there a gap in there? Or
So we ended up signing with Universal, but it was under a UK branch. So it was Polydor Records. And within that, it was independent on Polydor. So the London kind of invitation just felt like it was just because the interest there was like substantial, and it also felt real. Like they were like, oh, no,
Mm.
we want to do this now. Versus, we did go to Sony, we went to Columbia, we went to all the ones here, but it was more like they just wanted to listen, see what we got, talk shop, and then it just felt like they probably were right, knew that like, oh, that they need more time. They have one song, they're great. There's a lot that we can do here, but especially without now knowing and doing all this, sometimes if you don't have these like this champion for you that's already has their arm in the industry,
Right.
it's a hard thing to trudge through. So we had that this woman, Amanda Ghost, was she was that for us, and she really wanted to get us in the studio, and also all the things we were talking about were like, well, we need to like write music. We have one song and we have some demos and we have ideas, but like, we need time. And she was like, well, I have a space, I have a studio. And for me, it was one of those like crazy, like you imagine Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and all these people we loved listening to growing up when they had their moments in London. I was, yeah, let's do this. This is how it starts. So it was a great it ended up being a great way to build a bunch of stuff. We had our first tours over there, our first shows, our first radios, TV, all the stuff. And it was like it was a little bit of a bubble, because even though for them it's these, oh my God, you did this, and I'm like, but I don't know who these people are. So and even if I told friends at home, they're like, that's cool. So it was nice because it's like you're living this whole other thing without the pressure of like really doing it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, obviously now doing this for 10 plus years, I'm like, I wish I had the opportunity to do all that stuff now. You know what I mean? Because now I would kill it. I would kill it. I'm not that I didn't, but I would know how to. I would know how to like seize the moment a little bit more.
Yeah.
But again, I also feel like if we weren't kind of thrown into the deep water, who knows if we would have like realized this is something we really want. This is something we really already have happening. That was another thing was me and Lucas, we do have this synergy about what we make on our sound. It's like something very special. And they were always trying to figure out like, oh, do they need this extra producer or this extra songwriter to like crack the code or, this. And a lot of times we would be in these rooms with great producers. I remember Mark Ronson to this day. He's like, I don't know. You guys don't need anything from me. Like we can hang out and like, if you want guitar licks over something, but like
Right.
what you guys do is like, that's the thing. You know what I mean? And then again, my first session ever was with Mark Ronson. The second session was with Pharrell. So it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, are we starting with the legends? Is that the way it's supposed to work?
Exactly. So it was one of those like, we just felt like such freshmen in this thing. But I'm really happy that stuff happened really early on too, because it did give us a key into to just like allow ourselves to just try,
Right.
and we didn't have anything to lose, so we just went for it, and a lot of times I think a lot of people that are in the industry, like they grow up and they want to do this their entire life, like, and this is what they want to do. So
Right.
either when the moment comes, they're ready for it, or like they think they want it, but then it comes and it's like a whole different thing. And again, in a weird way, my my proximity to fame my whole life, like none of that really has ever interested me, because I
Right.
know it. I
So the
know,
dark side, right?
yeah, and it's a facade. It's not real. You know what I mean? So that's never been the aim. So that was why I think we were able to just focus on like what do we need to do, and how can it was really about longevity. I think that's what I've always
Mm.
about the people that can maintain some type of, like, it's not about hitting that one. I don't want to be a one hit wonder. I want to
Right.
do the rest of
Right.
my life. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it was definitely like throw yourself into the deep end and then figure it out, and we're still swimming.
Right. What how would you describe your sound? Because it is kind of distinctive. I mean, and and who do you think are the major influences that people would hear when they listen to you?
Um, I mean, it continues to evolve, which I feel most artists do.
Yeah.
At the time of its inception, I've always loved Erica Badu. She's definitely a um example of just I feel freedom for me, like within her expression and her style and her swag and her songwriting and the samples she uses, like all of those things. That she was like definitely someone I was listening to a lot when I started working on Lion Babe. But always a distinctive voice, like, you know, bless her soul, Roberta Flack, but like Shaka Khan, like all these people that my mom would play in the car when we're like driving around, like even like Earth, Wind and Fire. Like I loved the soul voices. So I was always coming from kind of soul sounds. And then Lucas, you know, he loved like the OG, like Kanye and Dilla and Pete Rock and these like hip hop, like Wu Tang, all these hip hop boom bap beats and stuff, but then also all the new electronic stuff that was coming in at the time. So he like we both had this kind of futuristic, nostalgic thing that we always loved. Like,
Really cool.
how do we take this and flip it? So you're still referencing this, but it's new. And that's always been our thing. Like that's kind of our formula. But now we're doing it in a lens within house music. Like
Mm.
we kind of after having Sunny, I was just so inside all the time, like breastfeeding and not doing anything, not partying at all, living a
Right.
completely different life that and then he was out DJing and stuff, you know, getting a couple extra checks here and there. And I think it was just a combination of me, like, I need some type of escape, and him, like, in the club wanting to be able to play our music as well, that this new tempo makes sense. And now
Yeah.
it's been such a great thing because it's kind of uses a lot of the sounds and things that we've been these soul samples, all the stuff we've been doing for years, but now we just have like a different heartbeat to it. Um, and so that's been really cool because as much as I would think that I kind of started with like, you know, again, when you're like trying to be cool, you end up going like a lot of girls they go sultry and soft and you know that's what they think is cool like and Pharrell was definitely the person for sure who was like you are like a diamond in the rough, like you don't even realize all the power you have in your voice, you know?
Uh,
And I'm telling you, you're going to be on stage one day and you're not going to want to sing that little lo-fi song. You're going to want your big song. And your voice is going to be like, where's the register I need to
wow.
connect, you know? And that was huge because that really gave me this idea of like, okay, how do we translate this live? Because again, going back to new school, like I am a performer first and foremost, and so I want to make sure that the music can articulate that in the best way when I'm on stage. And so that really kind of ended up changing our sound as well because we were trying to also create these songs for the live moments.
That's
And
interesting.
now
Yeah.
again, these house songs have been amazing because not only you get the tempo racing, but then you have moments to blow out and sing.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, so it's just like it's always like I think our music and our style always is a reflection of like what we've learned and where we are in time. you
Yeah,
know.
which is beautiful. Did you, what's your songwriting process like together, and has that evolved over time?
Oh, thank God it's evolved. yeah. The beginnings. Oh my goodness. I think it was just, again, coming from dance, being in this big open space with bright light, dancing with a bunch of bodies, not feeling judged. And that's, so you're in this little room that's dark and all you hear is your voice. You're
Yeah.
just like judging yourself so hard. So I used to nitpick and rack my brain on every sentence, every melody, all
Wow.
these things. And you know, to the point that I think it was really I just was like not even enjoying it sometimes, which is why I'm sure the label was like, let's get other people in the room. But then I would be like, well, why would they know what I'm trying to say? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
but then the same way that why am I approaching them with a wall when I would go into a class with a choreographer and soak it all up? You know what I mean? So I had to like readjust how I was approaching things, because I was very protective of my freedom, but I also, my mom again would tell me like, if you don't, you got to also just take the risk too, to like work with other people. You know, you have to try,
Yeah.
because it could be great. It also could suck, but it also could really be great.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and then again, someone like Pharrell, like you being in the room and seeing, he not only did he have our session that day, he had 3 other sessions that day. You know,
Wow.
he was like, I write a song every day, you know, so seeing that kind of like disregard for like having it needing to be this amazing thing every time, and it's really about again the practice and the process and just like
Mm.
just finishing the thing, you know, finish the song. That was super valuable, and that took a lot of time to get out of my own way and get out of our own, both of us. Like Lucas would, you know, he would work on the mix tediously and try everything until he took it all off again, you know, and we would both do that, and it would just slow everything down, you know what I mean? So we are at a point now that like we when we go in, for a lot of reasons, also we got to get home to the baby, but when we are in, we are just on. We don't second guess ourselves. We get it done, and we can turn back and listen to it later. And like so that took a long time to develop, but I'm so thankful. And now I absolutely love songwriting. You know, it's like,
Mm.
you know, so and I did love it then. It was just I don't know. I think I always thought the pain has to be part of it too. You know, you have to be like
Right.
angsty, you gotta go on your walks and like
The tortured artist.
tortured artist. I was like, why am I torturing myself? Like, let's have a good time, you know? So, yeah, so that was again, a lived experience to get to where I am now. And, yeah, I'm happy that I don't put so much pressure on myself, because it's like, what's the point? It's just
Yeah. Oh, amen. Right. When you started, did the like dance is such a huge part of your life, but it's also such a huge part of your act, right? Of your performance. Was that like an intentional plan thing, or did that just happen organically when you started performing live? It just happened.
a little bit of both. I thought I would dance on stage. I just didn't realize how much I would dance on stage. How sometimes I literally can't stop. Like I will say, well, I'll be getting makeup done or whatever. I was like, oh, you know, I'm gonna take it easy today. And everyone will just roll their eyes. Okay, well, whatever you say. And because I go somewhere else when I'm on stage, and the
Mm.
energy takes over, and I can't stop moving. I literally can't stop moving. And whether it's like a subtle hand movement or a big kick or a split or anything, I know I'm like, oh my God, I rolled around in that dress. We pulled it from this. I gotta return it. Did I rip it? You know, all this stuff. But for me, like that's part of it. And I love that too, because I think when I have feedback and people that write to me and whatever, they'll always say like, I just love seeing your freedom and how you take up space on stage. Like it's really like it means a lot for me to see you do that. And obviously I appreciate choreography, and I'm still trying to return to it in some way now, but it was also that was the new thing for me too. Like I was like, I don't need to like set a two-step for this song. Like I want to just trust where I'm gonna go. And I always have like a map of what I'm doing. Like I know moments I'm hitting, but I also always leave room for what the moment's going to be. Like I don't want to be so stuck again on thinking this is how it's supposed to be, and not giving life the moment to be like, no, you're going to do this a little bit bigger tonight. And that's not going to be your moment. This is the moment, you know? So, that's why it continues to be exciting to perform, because it really like every performance is different, you know?
Yeah.
Um, which makes it fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you do the whole London thing, right? And that early like success and opportunity that was kind of a little bit overwhelming, right? What then happens, and how do you end up coming back here? And when do you start to realize that like, oh, this this is a real thing. Like we're doing it. Like we've got a following and we're getting the recognition. And how did that all play out?
Let's see. I mean, I knew in London that we had something just because I was like, it's happening here. So if it can
Right.
happen, why can't it
I
happen
can
somewhere
it.
else?
Right.
And then being under Universal, it was inevitable that they would have to put us in some type of US branch as well. So we ended up on Interscope. And, again, that was challenging because we didn't have our team. Like we didn't have our champion in that. We were just like kind of like filed away in there. Um, and that's always a little bit hard, especially when you feel like you have everything, but you just don't necessarily have uh the opportunities to like make the most of those things. And that's kind of when as soon as we started to kind of like work here a little bit more, we were like, okay, well, I don't know if this is really working. Also just because to have to also explain yourself to your own team is hard. It's like that's cutting into the time that we could work on stuff and get things done and push the project and all this stuff. And unfortunately those systems are scary because everyone's just worried about not getting fired. We our label right before our first album went out completely folded. Like she was let go, and all the people, our marketing team, everyone was just, we were the only artist from our little label that was merged back into Polydor. So
Oh,
the album came out, and no, everyone was there. So I think that, and luckily, I think they were kind enough to let us go and let us do our thing and be like, okay, you guys can get out because we know you go to have your team. And so as soon as we knew that was going to be coming, it was a freedom, and it was also a challenge of just knowing, okay, we're independent artists. What does that even look like? And the amount of things we had to do, all of a sudden we're doing all the administrative work as well. And, we're our social team and creative director and all of the facets that go into what we're doing. But that also made us so much more aware of what we wanted to do.
yeah.
And yeah, and I think we just pulled up our bootstraps and we're like, let's go, let's do it. And we did our first mixtape tour in the States, like off of the Pantene campaign, and just kind of like, let's just keep it moving. And those shows were really great, and we had great turnout. And all the people, our booking agent was amazing as well. And definitely our live aspect. Every time we have a show, we'd have a great write up. Like, we've been in New York
Right.
Times, LA Times, all this stuff.
Right.
Just people were like, she's a phenomenal performer there. All that stuff was really a great way to continue on. And then we ended up getting a lot of corporate gigs because of that as well. So obviously finance comes into it, and knowing that, okay, we had the entrance into the door, but we're able to maintain, like, people enjoy working with us, and we've built these relationships, and we still have so many more ideas and things to do. So let's just commit to it. And yeah, we kind of just have never stopped. That was, and it changes all the time because everything changes between streaming and how
Right.
people listen to music, and everything changes every single day. We're learning about new platforms and all of this. But again, I think I feel that beyond everything, I'm still able to wake up every day and pretty much do whatever I want, like,
Yeah.
be awesome, and make a living from it. Like,
Right.
obviously, yes, I wish streams had more than $0.00 in there.
Right. Yeah.
But to know that the body of work that we've cultivated over these years still brings in a monthly, here's your little check, and it's really something to be grateful for. I feel very fortunate.
That's amazing. Did you was it very different playing the festivals as opposed to your own gigs and the kinds of venues you were playing just as
Definitely. I love festivals. I love all the big stuff. I mean, I'm like, get me, I want to be on the biggest stage ever. Um, I love the intimate ones too, because those are also really different. You get to connect with people in a
Yeah.
different way. And also for our, for our shows, we've always done, I mean, I feel maybe like the biggest room we sold out for my 30th birthday at the El Rey Theater in LA. That's like a 5,000 room. It was like sold out.
Wow.
Huge chandelier. Everyone's like, damn.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And that I'll never forget that moment because that was like our crowd. Um, but I do like something like Coachella was incredible as well. We're it's different because it's like, okay, you're in the daytime and the last person that was on stage was Beyonce. Like literally on your stage. You're on the main stage and she was right there. I was like,
What?
but what is this life? But then it also pushes you really hard because you have this new audience. They don't know anything about you. They're just passerby. So it's like a great challenge to get them engaged and to get them like, oh, you're not going to leave. I see you. You're staying right there. You know what I mean? So that I love that component of the festivals because it's like a little bit of like, all right, who are you going to get on? Are you going to be talked about? Are you not going to be talked about? Like make a memory, a kind of thing. So I do love festivals. And another tour run that we did a song with this, I don't know if you know Disclosure.
Hmm.
They're amazing, extremely successful. But I was on their album and that was like one of the first collabs I ever did with anyone else. And even then they were young, they were brothers and they were young and they were like, I'm sure, I don't know if they thought they were intimidated by Lucas or they're like, we don't want him in the room. Like only Jill can come. So I went to the
Wow.
session.
Okay.
I know. And so we did the session and I'm like, oh, you guys are fine. I'm like, you guys would love Lucas. I don't know what that was. And they're like, we just didn't know. And like now they're fine. But it was funny at that time. And so they're like, okay, we're doing this tour. And they invited me on tour. So I went on tour with them
That's awesome.
all over the place, in Europe and in the States. And, they at that point still were like at the pinnacle of what they were doing. So they had like huge tour buses, huge stages, me on this jumbo screen. I'd come out to thousands of people every night,
Awesome.
dance, and it was just like the most electric time ever. I had so much fun, learned so much. But yeah, I think I've always loved the big stages just because the energy is like it's just magical.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we'll do more. We have a couple of shows this summer for Pride. Pride is always a big
Yeah.
time for us. And yeah, we're always just open to, just keep it moving.
Yeah. Well, it's great. The big stage, I mean, it lends itself to you, right? Your whole performance, the dance and your persona, like it's almost made for that.
And it's great still to this day. We just did our European tour and, we were in more like 500 cap rooms. And also because, again, a lot of people aren't going to shows as much. Like it's hard.
Right.
It's hard. People can't afford it and this, that, and the other. But then I'll go and every single time there's at least one person like, you need to be like on the biggest stage in the world. Like, what are you doing on this little stage and stuff? So that's always nice to see that people also see that for me as well. So I'll get there.
Now, what's the timing of you and Lucas' personal relationship becoming romantic and the professional one? Were they always intertwined or was there a this and then that?
They were definitely intertwined. And when we got the like actual like contract and like to sit down and sign the papers of Lion Babe, I don't think he really was racking his brain about it as much. He's like, yeah, let's do this. Me, on the other hand, I was like, this feels like we're getting married. I don't know how many people say when you join a band, it's like you're joining a marriage.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, in my head, just going over the things. And I'm like, the thing I like about Lucas still to this day is he literally adores me in my fullest form of myself, whatever that is. And it's like, if I want to wear a thong leotard on stage and I have 4 wigs on my head, he's like, yeah, that's Jill. Go ahead. I'm cool. I'll be over here playing guitar. You know what I mean? That I knew that I had nothing to worry about in that. And he's extremely loyal. He's extremely hardworking,
Yeah.
super smart, always trying to learn the next thing, the next step of information and stuff. So I just always am like, this isn't that scary because even if it doesn't work out, like I don't think we're gonna make a misstep here. Like we both are hard workers, and I think we both like to work. We like to make things. So that eventually, when I got over that, I was like, okay. And then again, I did have many times, and now we're much better at it. But the boundaries of a producer is giving you a note versus your boyfriend is
I was
giving
going to ask. Yeah.
um that was really hard for both of us sometimes to know like how to define what is that, and also like, oh, how do we go out and go out for a drink or go for dinner and not end up talking about work, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like literally
Right.
be sitting like eating pizza and the song comes on and I'm like, oh, what's that sample from again? And then we're like talking, next thing you know we're like, oh yeah, we should put that little sound in there, you know. So still to this day that's a very challenging aspect, but I was much more sensitive before to his notes and anything. If there was a disagreement or just something, I would take it personally. And I think that was something I had to learn, and still have to learn. But now I don't take it personally. I'm kind of just like, oh, whatever. And I think we can sometimes be blunt with each other, but again, we both have the practice now of knowing like this is not directed towards Lucas. It's not directed towards me. This is just directed towards like what are we working on right now? You know, like the actual note for the line, not you, like not how you're singing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that was a challenge. But again, having that kind of safety and trust with someone, no matter how hard it was, is also a blessing. Like
Right.
that's such a rarity to feel like he can push me to like just try it. And if I do try to do a big note and it sounds weird or something, like we can laugh about it, you know. I don't have to feel like, oh my God, like that was the worst thing in the world, you know, which I used to feel. So yeah, I think the safety of just feeling we got each other, especially now more than ever, allows us to create this freedom. And I think that's what people are feeling when they're listening. It's like it's
Yeah.
that connection and that like that permission for each other to be, you know, who we truly are.
Wow. That's beautiful. I mean, I was getting teary. Like, it's really beautiful. And
It
then,
is our love language. It really is. It really is. I have
right?
to remind myself sometimes. So I'm like, we haven't gone on a date in like months, but I'm like, oh, but music is our love language, so the studio counts.
And
Yeah.
then what's with it? So then, and then you add in becoming parents together.
Yeah.
Like, what's that been like both for you as a woman and as well as a partner? And then how has that affected your professional relationship?
Honestly, I think again, all of the stuff we were doing was like prepping for this. Because we've been partners, life partners for so many years now that all of these administrative things with Sunny are like now second nature, and we know each other's minds. You know, I know he's not going to know where X, Y, and Z is in the house. So I'm going to make sure that's laid out. So I don't even have to have that moment of being like, where did you bring this, that, you know? So to be a couple steps ahead of each other
Yeah. Yeah.
because we know each other so well is huge. And also playing to our strengths. Like he's the computer dude, you know, I'm the analog girl, you know, so we know there's certain things that he can do and certain things that I can do better. And we were like, okay, you're gonna do that and you're gonna do that. And also again, don't not taking things personally, knowing when we need space, you know, if I've been with Sunny all day and I need to go on a walk, like I got you, you know, vice versa. He's tired. He had a DJ set till 4 in the morning. He can't wake up with us. I got you, you know, so like just being able to roll with the punches and also getting out of our own ways of like, okay, I think in the beginning of Sunny, we had the schedule, we're trying to schedule everything perfectly and like, okay, we'll do this and that. And things happen, you know, whether like he gets sick, you got to pick him up, or this happens and that's not working out, and just shifting is always important. Just having that the flow of it all, and that's with our industry too, because everything does change, and there's no like, okay, we sometimes we're like, okay, this is coming out on this date, but like that's so rare because something will happen, and
Right.
then like,
Right.
actually that's not the day anymore because this needs to happen and this needs to happen. So we just, I think, making sure we check in with each other, talking when we need to,
Mm.
over communicating, I think is sometimes was not necessarily the thing I learned in my family, but a lot of the people around me that I grew up were super communicative with their family, and I think I always wanted that with my partner. Um, and that's how we are. And we don't, whether it's uncomfortable or not, it's better to just say it and get it out of the way rather than carry it, and then it ends up blowing up in our face later.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
beautiful. Wow. What would you before I let you go, what would you say to your 17 or 18-year-old self now?
Oh, what did I say to her? I still talk to her all the time.
Oh,
I would say you are fine, and you are living in your purpose, and just say more yeses to yourself. Uh,
mm,
take more time for you, and just don't there's nothing to be afraid of.
yeah. Yeah, it feels like, unlike a lot of people, you relatively early on, though, learned or discovered your inner courage, right? I mean, it really did feel, and look what has happened. I mean, you've charted a really unique path, right? You and Lucas, like, it's extraordinary, right? In an industry that has been changing, as you said, so rapidly, right, at a breathtaking pace, and have been able to carve out in a field that is so derivative,
Mhm.
right? That it feels like every time you listen to some new music, you're like, oh, that sounds like so and so.
Right.
And you guys really do have this distinctive, not only sound but stage presence, and have been able to, like you say, you still get the checks coming. You're still like in the industry, being successful, like have a following. Like it's pretty extraordinary, right? And that took a lot of courage, right, to be that authentic and take that chance, right?
Yeah, I think when you get to it was young for me for sure, and I see it in my sister now. She's
Mm.
24. She's also making music and everything. So she always calls me about everything. And I'm always telling her like, "Oh, just go for it. Just go for it. Just try it. What's the
Yeah,
worst thing that can happen?" And
right.
um, I think especially it for me. It also was breaking up with my first boyfriend, my high school boyfriend. Like,
Mm.
and I'll trust you, great guy. We're still friends to this day. But I think being like that was like that just broke me. I was like, oh, and but it was like my identity was just like, well, that actually maybe that wasn't even me at all. You know what I mean? Like it was love, it was all these things, but it just was like a whole other life that I never even did the other stuff I wanted to do. And that I think ever since that it just felt like I'm like, what am I doing all that for? Like it made me like meet myself like right then and there. And then from there I've never been able to like not do that. Like I'm so bad at lying, or just like I'm like, I can't, this is how I feel. Like, and ever since that moment I've always kind of been that way. And I'm fortunate for it because it was like, you know, it was early, but it was definitely um it was needed. And again, I'm happy, which I hope for everyone in the world, is when you have something that like just helps bring it out, like
Yeah.
dance for me was that, and still to that day, like I see the world through dance, and like it just gave me an invitation to be who I wanted to be. And so that's what I hope for everyone, is that, you find something that gets you so excited. And engaged and curious in this way about yourself, uh,
Mm,
and then it becomes larger than yourself. Like obviously, I think being aware of yourself and cultivating your things to make you feel good and all is so important. But especially being a mom now, like my goal is now greater than myself. I'm hoping that I'm a living example of just doing whatever you want to do and seeing how that will
mm.
manifest for itself. So yeah, that's what I try to do.
That's beautiful. It's so empowering, right? And the interesting, like you mentioned earlier about how even the name Lion Babe, like, was for the group, but it's evolved over time, right? There's a certain amount of it being like your alter ego, but it really became an ability to channel part of your authentic self in the most beautiful way, like in a really, as you've said repeatedly, like a freeing, liberating way. That's amazing. What a gift, right?
I feel blessed every day for it,
Yeah.
really.
Oh, well, and I feel blessed to have had this experience with you and to be able to reconnect with you. I'm so proud of you and in awe of you. And, to again think back at that day we were sitting at a picnic table and you had this vision for this career and you made it happen. You manifested it. I mean, it's really amazing with so much wisdom that you've taken away from this. It's really extraordinary. So I'm deeply appreciative of you sharing that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for letting me speak about it. Because sometimes it's also amazing to take some time to just look at your journey and see what you've done. And, because everyone's always head down in the work. And
Right.
it's also really exciting to see, like, oh, I did do that. Like
Yeah.
if you hadn't pointed that out to me, I'm like, oh, I have, you plant these seeds and sometimes you don't even realize you're planting them.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great is when you look back, you're like, oh, you've accomplished those things. So that's why it's great to have as much integrity in the choices that you're making, because that's where all the joy is going to come
Right.
from.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. Oh, I love how you did that. That was great. Thanks.
I've done a few of these before.
Jill Hervey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
How great is Jill Hervey? That was so much fun. I got to tell you, she's just such a wonderful human being. I hope you enjoyed that even half as much as I did. And please share it with everyone you know. I think everyone would enjoy listening to her. She's so charming and real, and her story is an incredible one. So check out her music. Go to lionbabe.com and please rate and review this podcast and share it with other people, and make sure you're following us again on social media. And if you're interested at all in how life coaching or an integrity circle could change your life, please go to integrityandjoy.com. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks for listening. If today's episode resonated with you, imagine what we could accomplish together in a one-to-one coaching session. Visit integrityandjoy.com to learn more and book your free consultation. Let's create the life you've been striving for.